Daf Nun Amud Aleph will begin on Mem Tes Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. Amr Shmuel, Olam al Yotzi Adam Esas Min Klal. A person should not remove himself from a group. He should not separate himself from a group. Meaning, we're discussing over here the halachas of mezuman, of benching. So the proper way of saying it is nivorech. Nivorech shachal. He's including himself. The mezamin is including himself in the mezuman. He's including himself with the others who are benching. Rather, don't say Baruch Hu is addressing them. You give the bracha. He should include himself with the rest of the group. How can you say that, Tanan? It says B'shloi Shavahu, when there's more than 3 people, the mezamin says to the rest of the other 3, Baruch Hu. You give the bracha. So you see that he is excluding himself. So he does separate himself. How can you say that Nevarach is the proper way? The Gemara says Af Baruch Hu. What it means to say in the Mishnah is that's also acceptable, but it's not the preferred way. It's also acceptable. If there's only 3 people, you can't say Baruch Hu, because you need 3 people who are Nevarach, who are being Mevarach. If there's 4 or more, you could say Baruch Hu, but nevertheless, Nevarach is preferred. Umikol Malkim Nevarach Adif. That's a better way. Domer Avada Barava Amri Be'Rav Tanina, and I'll prove it to you because we learn in the Mishnah further Vav Nechlakim Adyut. If there's 6 people, they can split up into 2 groups. When there's 10, you can't split up because you have a chiyuv of Elokeinu. There's a minyan. If you split up, you won't have a minyan. You won't be able to say Elokeinu. You won't be able to say Baruch Elokeinu. But if there's less than 10, as long as you have 3 in the groups, you can split up into different groups as long as each group has 3. Now, if you tell me that Nevarach is Adif, I understand. You have 6. 2 groups of 3, each one says Nevarach, and that's fine, that's the preferred way. But if you tell me that Baruch Hu is Adif, well, if you have 6, you could say Baruch Hu. 3 people, you can't say Baruch Hu, because the one who's mezaman, he's addressing the other people, you need a mezuman of them that are being Mevarach. 3 people can't say Baruch Hu, 4 can. So if Baruch Hu is Adif, how can 6 divide into 2 groups of 3? You're not going to be able to say Baruch Hu. That shows you then the Nevarach is Adif, not Baruch Hu. So it says, Vav nechlakim adjurin ma bishlam Nevarach Adif, mishumach nechlakim Eli amret Baruch Hu Adif. If Baruch Hu is Adif, amay nechlakim, how can you split up Elalav Shema Mina, Nevarach Adif, Shema Mina? It shows you conclusively that Nevarach is the preferred way. Tanya namahachi ben shamar Baruch Hu, ben shamar Nevarach. Either way, ain't taif sanois al kach. It's both acceptable, and you don't catch them on either way. But the ones who are particular, they will be particular with him, they will catch him on that, and therefore they would insist on saying Nevarach, because Nevarach is the preferred way. Now we're talking about being precise, and the brachas, the Gemara is going to give other examples of being precise. From the way he gives the brachas and makes the brachas, you can discern if he's a Talmud Chacham or not. In the nusach of the Zimun, if he says uvetuvai, then he's a Talmud Chacham. Uvetuvai is more all-encompassing, so it's a greater praise. Umituvai harizabor. But if he says umi, it's minimized. It's from your goodness. It's only partial. Then it's a bor. He's a bor because he's minimizing the praise that he's giving to Hashem. Amrleya Bailer of Dimi. How can you say that? We see in the pasuk that Dovid HaMelech says, he asked for a bracha from Hashem. We said umi. So he is using the lashon of me. More answer b'sheila shiny. When you're making a request, then you do it with humility. Umi, you're doing it more minimal way. You do it with humility, with anava. When you're praising Hashem, you don't say umi, you do it in the maximum way. So it's uvatuvay chayim. Frank the Gemara ubeshela nami. You're telling me by the shela you should do it umi. I'll show you that ubeshela we don't say that. That we see by a shela of a request. Open your mouth full. So we don't do it minimizing it. We don't do it with humility. Open your mouth wide. So you see, even in a request, you do it to the maximum. More answers, how would you see? When you're asking for divrei Torah, you do it to the maximum. But when you're asking for personal needs, for For Olam Hazadika things, then you do it humility in a more minimal way. Tanya Rabbi Yomer. So other examples of being precise. Uvet bituvoi chayinu hareza talmid chacham. If he says bituvoi chayinu, he's a talmid chacham. Chayim hareza bor. But if he says Chaim, he doesn't say chayinu. He says Chaim is a bor. If he says chayinu, he's including himself. But if he says Chaim, it seems to refer to mankind, to the world at large, and not including himself. So he has to say Chayinu, including himself, that Hashem sustains us, including himself as well. Now, they learned it just the opposite, because apparently they held that when you say Chaim, it's a greater praise because you're encompassing more than yourself, you're encompassing the whole world. But that's not the halacha. We say Chayinu, that is the halacha, that's the way we say it. Another example, Nevorach shachalnu mishaloi hareza talmid chacham. If he says shachalnu mishaloi, that's a talmid chacham. It's clearly referring to Hashem. If he says lemi shachalnu mishaloi, it's a bor because he could have a connotation that of referring to the balabayas, that to the host. So therefore, he's a bor. What do you mean? We do say in the praise by Seder night, we say limisha asalavasenu. Over there we say limi. And it's a praise to Hashem. It doesn't refer to the host. He said, no, that's over there, it's muchach. It's clear. We're not going to make a mistake. The host does not, the balabais does not make nisim. We're talking about praising Hashem for nisim, then we can say lami because it's clear we're referring to Hashem. But when we're saying about the food that we ate, well, if he says lami, that could be referring to the host, so we don't say lami. If he says that sha'achalnu, he says the Bach changes the gear set to nevorach. If he says nevorach sha'achalnu mishaloi, that's a talmid chacham. Al hamazon sha'achalnu is a bor. If he says al hamazon is a bor because that could refer to the food that he's giving. He's giving a bracha on the food. So therefore, he should say that. He should say rather nevorach sha'achalnu mishaloi. That rather not shachalnu mishaloi, not al hamazon shachalnu mishaloi. Amar v'una b'rei Rabbi Yeshua lo yamin b'gimel d'lek Hashem Shemaim. That's only if there's a zuman of 3 where he's not mentioning Hashem. It's not Shem Shemaim. Havavasara dik Hashem Shemaim. If there's a zuman of 10 or more where he's saying Elokeinu, then muchach milsa. Then that's not a problem. It's muchach. It's clear that he's referring to Hashem. Kiddusan. Like we learned in the Mishnah, then when he has the case where he has the myriads of people in the Mezumin, he says, Baruch Hashem l'kei Yisrael, l'kei tzvokes, yeshav krum, al hamazon shachalnu. Over there, he does say al hamazon, because then it's muchach over there, that it's referring to Elokeinu is mentioned, and it's muchach that is referring to Hashem. The Mishnah says that when you come to 10, it says, now once you come to say 10, then they say Elokeinu. It doesn't matter if it's 10 or 10,000 or 100,000. And then the Mishnah, the next word in the Mishnah says, then it says there's a difference if it's 100, there's a difference if it's 1,000. So it seems to be a contradiction. It says that once you reach 10, the ratio says once you reach 10, there's no difference if it's 10 or 1,000 or 100,000. And then the next word in the Mishnah is, if there's 100, the nusach changes. If there's 1,000, the nusach changes. So haguvakash amrat echad asara vechad asara riboy al makiyad adaninu. That once you have more than 10, it's all the same. Then it says 100, 1,000, it changes. More answers. It's a machlokes between Rabbi Yosef Glin and Rabbi Kiva. This not Rabbi Yosef Galili. This latter part that makes a difference between 100 and 1,000, etc. That's a sheet of Rabbi Yosef Galili, who says, according to the size of the congregation, that's the way you make the bracha. Shenem b'makhelos baruch Elokim, with makhelos, with the congregation, according to the size of the congregation, you make the bracha. The Reish is Rabbi Kiva. And then when it says it switches, it's Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Kiva says, just like we see in a shul, when we have davening in shul, there's a minyan. It doesn't make a difference if there's 10 people in the shul, 100 people, or 1,000 people. You say Baruch Hu in the same way. So too by benching. What does he do with the pasuk of Rabbi Yossi Aglili? I Bakhelis, it seems to be according to the congregation. He answers me, boy, it's needed for the following drasha. How do I know that I Kriyas Yamsuf? Klal Yisrael said Shira, even the Ubrim, that was in the mother's womb. How do you know that they also said Shira Shenemar Makhelis Baruch Halakim Hashem Kar Yisrael Mimakor from the source? Even those the fetus, they also said the Shira. V'idach Mimakor Nafke. He says Makhelis. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says Makhelis one drasha. Makor is a separate drasha. You can learn out both. The halachas like Rabbi Kiva, we do not make a distinction. That's the way we paskin, and there's no difference if there is 10 or there's 1,000. Ravina Rav Chama Brabuzi Iklabei Reish Galusa Kam Rav Chama Kama Hader Abei Meya. He went to look for 100 to see if there was 100 people that he can make a mezuman with. Apparently, he held that like Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Ravina Loitzrichas. Rabbi Kiva, so it doesn't matter if there's 10, 100, you don't have to gather 100 people together. When they had the meal by the Reish Galusa, there was a large feast over there. Then they used to, the ones that were not close to the Reish Galusa, they used to split up into groups of 3. Now, that's problematic. If they were in a large suda, there was more than 10 people, they have a chiyuv of mezuman with a minyan, alakenu. And by splitting the groups of 3, you can't. Normally we say you're not allowed to split into groups of 3 because you're not going to be able to say alakenu. So frankly, more of a yud. But why don't they split up in groups of 10? So at least they'll be able to say alakenu. Where it says, because Shama Reish Galusa v'ikpid, he'll be makpid that they're not benching together with him. Frankly, more, well, why don't they bench with him? So the Reish Galusa, why aren't they Yotze with the Reish Galusa benching? More answers. There's a big group over there. There's commotion. There's loud noise. They're not going to be able to hear it, so they have to bench separately. Now, even though normally you're not allowed to, if there's 10, you're not allowed to split into groups of 3, but over here there is a cover of the Reish Galusa. This din that you can't split is a Drabanat din, but here's the covet of the Reish Galusa that outweighs that Kapeda in not splitting into groups of 3. So therefore, they couldn't do 10. It was a pegam in the covet of the Reish Galusa. They couldn't be Yotze with the Reish Galusa's benching because they couldn't hear it properly. So they had to split into groups of 3. If 3 are coming and eating meal together, and one goes ahead and benches first and benches early, so there was no mezuman, he ate with them, he can still answer for their mezuman. They can be yotze the mezuman, but they do. But he can't be yotze with their zimun. He already benched, so he can't be yotze zimun anymore. But they can still be mitzaref him for their zimun. Rav Shmuel says in the Mishnah we had in the Sefer, it says Borcho es Hashem HaMevorach. As when we say in Shul that we say Borcho, that it's Borcho es Hashem HaMevorach. Rav Rambam Dabe Gibor, he went to that shul Kam Korah Besifra, so he was leaning in the Torah of Omer, and he said the Berchos Torah, he said Amar Borchos Hashem. He didn't say Mevorach Vishtik. He didn't say B'lo Yamar Mevorach. Av Shekulo Hayam Borchos Hashem HaMevorach. Everyone in a loud voice said Baruch Hashem HaMevorach. Amar Rav Pasha Uchma, a black vessel, Talmud Chacham, that he was so engrossed in learning that sometimes his clothing was black. Mahadi Plukta Alamalach. Why are you getting involved with this machlokes Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel, and you're conducting like Rabbi Kiva? Why do you get involved in the machlokes? And the minig is like Rabbi Shmuel. So why are you getting involved in this machlokes? First of all, why are you getting involved? Because Rabbi Kiva would also be made as Rabbi Shmuel. He's just saying that you don't have to say Mevorach. But as Rashi explains, but it's also acceptable. So why get involved with the machlokes? And secondly, the minig is like Rabbi Shmuel. Let's see the Mishnah in Gimel Shachlu Ka'acha. So 3 people ate together in Rishai L'chalik. They cannot split into separate groups because that would be mafkir the zimun. And you would have less than 3, you would not be able to make a mezumin. And 4 or 5 also cannot split because one of the groups will be less than 3. But like we said before, if there's 6, they could split because each group would have 3 until they get to 10. Then if they have up until in 9, they can even split into 3 groups. But 10, they can't split because each group will not have a minyan. They won't be able to say Lekena. Until they get to 20, they can split into 2 groups because each group would have a minyan. If 2 groups were eating, they were in the same house, but they weren't eating together, and they're eating separately, as long as they can see partially, part of each group and see part of the other group, they can join together for a zim. But if not, they should each one do it separately. A separate halach is you don't make a bracha on the wine until you put water in it. The wine that was not diluted was too strong to be drunk as regular as wine. In those days, it had to be diluted. If it was not diluted, it did not have the chashivas of yain. It was something a drink that people would not drink and have the benefit of it as a wine, the taste of wine. So therefore, you don't make the bracha of yain. The special bracha, Borei Pri Hagafen, on wine, this doesn't have that chashivas. You don't make Borei Pri Hagafen. As Rishayim point out, the bracha that you would make is Borei Pri Eis. It's considered like fruit juice. It's considered fruit juice and a juice that you would make an eitz on that type of juice. If it's mixed with wine, it has the chashivas of wine, and you make a Borei Pri Hagafen. So, ein mevorchim al yanin shin zuchamayim div Rabbi Eliezer. But Chachamim mevorchim, Chachamim say nevertheless it still has the chashivas, and you would also make a Borei Pri Hagafen. Let's see the Gemara Mai Kamashal. It says 3 people come to eat together, they can't split up. They have a mezumin Mai Kamashal. Anteni nechanazim. No, we already learned Gimel Sha'achlu Ka'achas Chayam Lazamin. We already learned before that there's a chiv of zimun. So, Kamashlan, the Chiddush is, the Chiddush is, as long as they came together, even if they didn't eat, the way Rishonim speak out, even if they didn't eat kazayas, they didn't eat a kazayas, they sat down to eat, they started to eat already, they cannot split up, because now they have a chayva, and even if they ate less than a shear of benching, but they already started to eat, you can't split up anymore.